All right. Click OK here to get started. So let's go through. We're going to talk about how to build a profitable company, which sounds very generic, but you'll see as we go through, we're trying to give you some actionable items that you could actually take away from today's meeting. All right. So the agenda for today, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. For those that don't know me, we're going to talk about some really basic understandings of profit, revenue, cost of goods sold, things of that nature, and some common pitfalls and errors that you want to try to avoid. We're going to go into some of the foundations that you should be using for building profitability into your company, building long-term success into your company. And lastly, we're going to talk about some of the scaling, some of the smart steps that you should be taking for your business as you grow, as you transition as a business, as you transition as a person, as an owner, as a leader, some of those things as we go through the process. So that's me. That's me from a couple years ago. This is me today. So I'm the owner of Blue Collar Back Office. My background, I come from working in the construction industry for many, many years. As we go through today's meeting, I'm going to share with you some of the stories, some of the practices that we have implemented with our construction company over the years, and the impact that it's had on our business, impact that it's had on my life, quite frankly. And Blue Collar Back Office, we've been going since 2018. And over that time, we've gotten to work with a lot of different businesses and a lot of different industries, but a lot of them come back to the construction industry in some way, shape, or form. And honestly, it's very rewarding for me to get to do that. So that's pretty much my main purpose is I get to work with our business owners, work with our clients to help them streamline their business, be more efficient in what they do, generate more profit, have a better understanding of their business, have a better understanding of their workflows so that they can attain their goals. Also, I get to work with an amazing team here of people that's really helped me achieve all of those goals. So today, the basic goal of today is we want everybody that's here to understand what's truly driving your profitability, avoid some of those common pitfalls, and to walk away with some actionable steps, some real things that you can do that implement into your business to make you more efficient, more resilient, more profitable, not just, kind of word salads, but some actionable things that you can do that will make a difference. Some of them very, very quickly. So let's start with quickly. One of the main things that I stress to any of our clients or any of the people that we're working with is understanding the difference between revenue and profit. And I know mostly everybody on this call, I think, would understand the difference of what those things are, but a shift in your mindset and a shift in terms of your goals. So we talk to a lot of people, particularly when they first come on board with us and they start working with us, and we start to get an understanding of what their goals are and what their business is all about and how they're kind of measuring their level of success. And a lot of times, those things are tied to revenue. They talk about their top line revenue as their goals. I'm a $1 million business. I'm a $5 million business. I'm a $20 million business, whatever. That's what they kind of base their goals and their success on is how much revenue they're doing. What's really important, one of the things that I really stress is shifting that perspective. And revenue is important. You need to have revenue, but shifting those success goals, shifting those markers that you're trying to hit from being a top line goal to a bottom line goal. Because I've told people many times in the past, like going from being a $1 million business and making $100,000 in profit, operating at a 10% net profit, going from 1 million and 100,000 in profit to going to 2 million in revenue and still only making $100,000 in profit, to me, there's not much success there. To me, you've added a lot of extra work. You've added a lot of extra headaches. You've added a lot of extra liabilities and stress and everything else like that without actually impacting your bottom line. To me, a lot more, what's more impressive is when you take $1 million business that generated $100,000 in profit, and the next year you do that same $1 million in business, but now you've generated $200,000 in profit or $250,000 in profit, right? Because that tells me that you're now running your business in a much more efficient manner. You're maximizing your potential. You're maximizing what you can become as a leader, what your business can become, and it just kind of trickles all down. And now you have a foundation that you could really build upon. So those are the things that we're going to dive into a little bit more today as we go throughout the class. And there's everything in writing. I should have clicked that button earlier so you could have seen it as I was talking about it. But I think everybody here understands basically what the revenue is your income, and your profit is what you have left over after all your expenses and everything along those lines. So here's kind of the pipeline of how it all filters down. And eventually, as we go through the class, we're going to actually review a P&L so you can see it and review a balance sheet. But obviously, top of the line is your revenue. Then after you take out your cost of goods sold, which is the money that you spend because you're doing work, you would not have these expenses if it wasn't directly tied to a project, a job, a service that you were providing. That gets down to your gross profit. After your gross profit, then you have your overhead, your operating expenses, the expenses that are going to happen for the most part, no matter what. As you grow, whether you have 5 jobs on the schedule, you have 15 jobs on the schedule, you have 2 jobs on the schedule, your overhead is going to waver a little bit as you start to grow. But for the most part, it's fairly static. You're paying your rent every month, you're paying your cell phone bill, you're paying your general liability insurance, like things like that, that will, as you grow, fluctuate a little bit, but for the most part, they're pretty static. You have to pay them no matter how busy you are this month. These are the bills you have to pay. So once you get past all of your operating expenses, overhead, you get to your operating profit. So that's really telling you how your business is operating. I run my business in this fashion. After I get to my gross profit, I take out my overhead. Here's how much money I have left over. That's a great indicator of how healthy you are on a day-to-day basis, on a project-to-project basis. And then unfortunately, we do have to pay taxes. So everybody wants their piece. So once you've done all that, you have your state tax, your income tax, all that kind of good stuff. You really get down to your net profit. Everything after that, your depreciation, your amortization, you're working with your CPAs, all those adjustments that aren't happening every single day, all obviously impact what happens in your business. Taking your taxes into consideration, estimated taxes, things like that, is a common thing that business owners, especially when they're first starting out, miss along the way. So we're going to talk about that today. So understanding all of these steps, as basic as it may seem, is really important. Actually, I got a secret for you guys. We are not going to discuss rocket science today. There is nothing that I'm going to talk about that is overly complicated. You're going to need a calculator for anything like that. It is pretty basic stuff that you really just have to be diligent and be aware of that makes the difference. Let's load. All right. So here's some of the common mistakes that happen a lot, especially with small business owners when they first start out. First thing is you're wearing too many hats. You started this business and now you are everything. You're the owner, you're the office manager, you're the salesperson, you're the customer service rep, you're the bookkeeper, you're the insurance agent, you're the lawyer, you're the HR, you're everything. Eventually, that's just not sustainable. We're going to talk about as you grow, you can't be the bottleneck of the company. You have to be the leader of the company. And too many times, everybody wants to wear every single hat. They want everything to fall on them. They want to have that responsibility. And in some ways, that's admirable, right? Like you take on a responsibility to your workers, your team. You want to make sure you're providing for them. You take on a responsibility to your clients and your community. I get it. But you have to understand that in the long term, that's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your business. It's not healthy for your clients. So understanding how to be the leader of your business and how to wear the hats that are actually important for you to wear and let other people do the jobs and be put in a position to be successful is really more beneficial for you and your company. The next big thing is not knowing your financial numbers. This comes up a shocking amount of times. There's a lot of business owners out there in the construction industry and all sorts of industries. All they think about is, hey, when I check my bank account, there's money in the bank, right? And I checked it last week and there's more money in the bank this week than there was last week. So I must be doing something. Okay, I must be doing something right. In a sense, maybe you are, but you don't really know. And you're not identifying the areas where you could be doing better. You're not identifying the areas that are really driving your business, where, like I said before, you can be maximizing your potential. You could be running a more efficient business that's going to generate more profit, actually give you a better balance of life and work and peace and all that kind of good stuff. And if you don't know your numbers, if you're not actually spending the time to review your P&L and your balance sheet and all that kind of good stuff, which isn't really that hard, you're not actually knowing what's going on with your business. You're just dealing with everything as it comes up. You're reactive to everything that's happening as opposed to being proactive in your business. The next thing is inefficient back office systems. So what we mean by that is there are a ton of tools out there that can help you run your business, whether it's companies or people like ourselves, but there are just a ton of programs out there that are really good at what they do. And some of them are free. Some of them don't even cost you money. They could be helping you run your business more efficiently, automate some basic, simple tasks that help increase communication with your clients, increase communication with your team, increase some of your workflows so that you have better visuals on your financials and what's happening in your business, there are tools out there that you can be using and should be using to help streamline some of that process. And the last part is the cash flow struggle. And this happens with literally every business when they first start out, and every business as they go through different phases and they transition and move into a growth period. Cash flow struggle is going to happen, but having clear understanding of your financials and being on top of your processes and making sure that you're doing everything in an efficient manner helps eliminate some of that cash flow struggle. Instead of having these peaks and valleys, you start having kind of smaller waves. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today too as we go through. So this, again, kind of what we just talked about, the foundations for profit, in my opinion. Start with your numbers, start with go to your systems, the tools that you have available to you, and then finally your people. Because it's understandable when you first start out your business, you are going to be the only person. But as you grow, you have to start adding more people, you have to start adding more tools, and you have to have the systems in place. So let's talk about our numbers, because that's, excuse me, in my opinion, where it starts. So we're going to talk about some of the key metrics, the things that you need to know about your business to help you make informed decisions. Some of them we touched on earlier. Some of them, your revenue, your cost of goods sold, and your gross profit. Let's start with those because they drive everything else. As you'll see when we go down the P&L, it drives everything else. So how are you landing your jobs? What type of work are you landing? How are you pricing out your jobs? And when you price out your jobs, what are you shooting for in terms of a gross profit, right? What is your markup, you might call it, but you're shooting for a gross profit and a gross profit percentage. So understanding how you're kind of building all that is really important. And then understanding and making sure that when you're building out your estimates, when you're pricing out your jobs, that you're doing it with realistic numbers. You're not just kind of, guessing, for lack of a better word, which you'd be surprised at the amount of people that do that. Understanding how to get to realistic numbers for cost, and then what your markup needs to be to actually generate enough gross profit to cover your overhead. You need to understand all that right from the beginning, because you can have a schedule that is jam-packed and you are constantly, you got crews out in the field working every day. People are calling you, you're putting them on the schedule 6 weeks from now because that's the first thing you have available. And you could just be grinding. You could just be spinning your wheels. That goes back to the example I gave before of growing from 1 million to 2 million, but not affecting your bottom line, because it starts at the top of the P&L where you're not actually pricing your jobs properly and not building in the proper markup or overhead, whatever you want to phrase it, to make sure that you're actually generating some net profit. Next thing you need to be tracking is your cash flow, your AR, your AP, and then the gross margin and overhead. So AR and AP, obviously really important, and it goes to your processes that you have in place. How much money do people owe you, and how much money do you owe people? So again, when you first start out, understandable, a lot of people are operating on COD. You're paying for everything as you get it. You go to Home Depot, you're given the credit card. You go to the lumber yard, you're given the credit card. You don't have house accounts, you're not building any kind of credit. But at some point, you do want to get to that point where you're starting to develop situations where you have a window, the same way that you're not necessarily getting paid as soon as you complete a job, that you're not paying out as soon as you need it, right? Because that's how you start to build that kind of cushion into your business, where you're sending out your receivables each week for every job that you finish. You got terms of net 15 days, net 30 days, whatever you decide to negotiate with your client. And then your vendors, kind of the same idea. You get some kind of payment terms, net 15, net 30. So it's shrinking that window between when you get paid for the work that you've done compared to when you have to pay out for that work. And the closer you can make that window, the less stress you're putting on the business, and everything kind of carries along and you're collecting profit on the way. Budgeting and forecasting leads to smarter decisions. As simple as that. Like it says on the bottom, what gets measured gets managed. So the types of things that you focus your energy on are the types of things that you get results out of. So when you're not just being reactive to what's happening, when you're being proactive to think about, hey, this is what my pipeline looks like. These are the types of contacts that I've made. These are the leads that I have. This is the type of work that I have coming up over the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever the case may be. And now what is that going to do to me? What is my cash flow going to look like? Am I going to be getting deposits that I need to set aside and make sure I don't burn through it? How is that impacting my estimated taxes? Like, the more energy and focus that you put on these things, that doesn't have a direct result on your bank account today, which is why it's so hard for some people to focus on, because it's not impacting something right now. It's impacting something down the road. But the impact that it has down the road is significant, because you almost know what's going to happen. There's always going to be little changes, but you almost know what's going to happen, which allows you to plan and do things that as you start to build up your nest egg and as you start to have more funds available to you and you're not trying to cover, every single week to make sure you have enough to cover your bills, you start to be able to do things with some of your funding that really makes an impact on your business. You can decide that, you want to grow your business. So you have the funding available to purchase new equipment without having to open up new loans. You can take some of that funding and put it into savings accounts that are now generating interest and making money for you. There's all sorts of things that you can do, options that you have available to you once you get a more stable cash flow and once you have that foundation that you can now build upon. So let's start with a P&L. This is a very basic one that we pulled from a sample company, but it covers all of the normal things that you would see, right? So starting at the top left, like I said, this is the top. This is our revenue, right? So we have the income that came in, and basically we can break it down into as many categories as we like. In this case, I think it's a landscape company they give us in the sample company. So they have all these different categories. Depending on your business, this might be 10 categories long. It might be two. It might be one. You might not need anything more kind of complicated than my income, my sales. But regardless, you get to your total income. Your next is your cost of goods sold. And in the sample company here, they did a really horrible job of giving us a good example, but you'd have your cost of goods sold. You'd have whatever you actually spent to generate that revenue. Like I said, your labor, your material, things along those lines. And then you get to your gross profits. You want to be tracking that as a percentage. You want to be setting a standard for what you expect as your gross profit, so that you're marking up your jobs properly. After that, you get to all of your, there we go. After that, you get to all of your overhead expenses, advertising, legal professional fees, rent expense, all utilities, all that stuff that's going to happen. That's your expenses. And now you get to your net operating income. That's how much income the business actually generated in this time period from this sample company. Pretty straightforward, really nothing too complicated. You can have a P&L that is 1 page long. You can have a P&L that's 4 pages long. It all depends on the type of industry that you're in and how detailed you want to be in your chart of accounts to create all of these different categories. And then you have your balance sheet. So a balance sheet is something that I find a lot of people don't look at. A lot of business owners look at their P&L. They understand how to read it. They get the basics of it at least. They understand income, gross profit, net profit. Balance sheet is for some people a little bit more complicated or confusing, and it really doesn't have to be. I would never do it, but if somebody told me, hey, I'm going to give you one report and you tell me whether a company is in a good financial position or not, this is the report I would look at. This is the report I would look at their balance sheet because it tells you what's actually happening in the business. So there's a couple different areas. So let's start with your assets. Your assets are the things that you have that are worth money. As simple as that. You have current assets and you have long-term assets. Your current assets are things that you have right now or you're expected to have relatively soon. So think of it like your bank accounts, you have that. Your accounts receivable, it's conceivable that you're going to receive that money pretty quickly. If you have inventory, things like that, those would be things that are in your current assets. You can have that as cash right now, or you can turn it into cash rather quickly. So you have your total current assets. Your fixed assets are things that are still worth money, but they're longer term, right? Your buildings, your trucks, things like that. You could sell them, you can make money off of them, et cetera, but you wouldn't be able to turn them into cash right away. So that's kind of how it breaks down. The liabilities is the same thing, just on the flip side, right? It's the money that you owe. And you break it down into current and long term as well. So your current liabilities are the things that you owe relatively quickly. Your accounts payables, your credit cards, sales tax payables, payroll tax liabilities, things like that. Your long-term liabilities are things like mortgages, loans, finances on a vehicle, everything along those lines. So the difference between your current assets and your current liabilities is what's known as your working capital. That's what banks look at a lot of times. If you want to go get a loan, line of credit, something like that, they want to know what your working capital is because it is a quick snapshot of the health of your business. So every company is different, every industry is different, but at a bare minimum, what they usually recommend is that you're operating at a 1.5 to 1 ratio, meaning that for every, in this case, it works out pretty perfectly, right? You have $6,000 in current liabilities, so you have a little over $9,000 in current assets. You can pay off all your current liabilities and still have some money left over. Obviously, the higher you make that ratio, the better you are. And then the last part of your balance sheet, and this is always what ties it out, is your equity. So it's the money that the ownership has in the business, your equity in the business. It's either going to be a positive or a negative, and it's going to have to reconcile to the difference between your total assets and your total liabilities. So in this case, in this scenario, the owner has negative equity in the business. They'd have to take money out of their pocket to put it in the business to settle everything out. The big reason being on this sample is this notes payable, right? They owe $25,000 on a construction loan. So they have to put money into the business to balance it out. As you're growing and as you're developing your business, obviously this number hopefully is going to continue to grow. Your equity is going to continue to grow, and you have a good, what they call debt to equity ratio, meaning that you have more equity in the company than you do debt, than you do liability. Before we go any further, because I shouted out a couple of numbers and went through some stuff, does anybody have any questions, anything they'd like to have me dive a little bit further into, or anything along those lines? Everybody's on mute, so if somebody's going to say something, they have to unmute themselves first. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Then let's keep going. All right, so systems. I'm a very big believer of making things as simple as possible. When you make something simple, it is very easy to repeat. When it's very easy to repeat, you are more likely to do it and things don't slip through the cracks. So a lot of times we've met with people and they have this really convoluted way that they do their invoicing out to their clients. It's tied to like 4 different programs and a Word document and this and that and the next thing. And it all looks fancy when it finally goes out, but it's so complicated. There's only one person that's capable of doing it, and it's time consuming and it's very labor intensive. And sometimes it then ends up getting backed up because you find you just don't have the time to do it. So make simple processes so that the simple processes can be repeated and nothing slips through the cracks. You would be shocked at how many times people simply do not send out their invoices. I can speak to that from experience on my construction side and dealing with some of our subcontractors. They just forget to send us bills. Like, we're literally calling them and begging them to invoice us so that we could be doing our job costing properly. We could be tying out our jobs. We're begging them to have us pay them, essentially. There's a lot of people that don't do that. There's not a lot of people out there that if you don't send them a bill, they just won't pay you. So if you don't have the processes in place to review these things, and then a simple process in place to get your invoices out, you'd be shocked at how many times those kind of things slip through the cracks. It does happen. So once you kind of establish these processes, make them repeatable, and now as you start to build a team, it's easy to hold people accountable because the expectation's there, the process is there. There's really no question. Everybody knows what's expected of them, when it's expected of them, and now you have some accountability. And now this starts to free you up as the owner to be focusing on the things in your business that you should be focusing on, the things that are really going to drive your profit, that are really going to drive your growth, not wearing every single hat and everything coming back to you. So let's talk about some of the tools. Like I said, in QuickBooks Online, there's other programs out there. There are things out there that are available to make your life simple. I talk a lot about QuickBooks Online because that's a program we live and work in every single day. So in your accounting system, and I know there's several other accounting systems, we're going to show some to you that are out there that are powerful and they do amazing work. And you can almost set it up to a set it and forget it type situation, depending on the type of industry that you're in and how you're running your books. So use those tools. Use things like in QuickBooks Online, you have the bank feed. So every single transaction, every single penny that comes in or out of your bank account or hit your credit card, it's going to make its way into the bank feed. And when it does, you just need to tell it where to go. You need to tell it what vendor it's associated with, where it goes on your chart of accounts. If your job costing, you need to tell it what project to go to, things along those lines. You can set up rules so that, hey, when this transaction comes through from this vendor with this bank detail, this is where I want it to go. So you're eliminating steps. You're eliminating these life minutes, as Gina, our director of operations, like to call it. She calls it her life minutes. Whenever she can cut those down, it makes our process more efficient. It makes everybody's life more efficient. And now you'll be shocked at the amount of time that you open up in your week that's going to allow you to do things like develop your team more, develop more clients, network, go out to metro events and land more business and develop more relationships, all of those things, because you're not wasting your time doing things that there are tools out there that could do it for you. Record keeping, receipt capture, There's a lot of different programs out there that can help you with those things that make the audit process smoother if you have to go through it, keep you from not having to manually enter your credit card transactions, based off of your statement every single month. Sometimes it's a process of this is what I'm used to doing, and that's kind of crippling in your business. You have to kind of break out of that of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sometimes if it ain't broke, you got to break it and rebuild it better, because there's some new tools out there, and they keep evolving that will really make you more efficient and generate more time, which will generate more profit. So these are some of the resources that we talked about. So on the paid side, yes, QuickBooks Online, I'm always going to kind of tout it because I do love it and I think it's a very powerful tool. There's also Xero is also out there, Sage, NetSuite. There's a lot of different accounting programs out there. On the project management side, there's programs like Procore, Buildertrend. There's a lot of programs that can help you run your business more efficiently. If you're not in a position, especially if you're just starting out, where you don't have a lot of capital and you're trying to do things a little bit by your bootstraps, there are things out there that you can use that are essentially free, right? Excel, Google Drive, like documents and spreadsheets and stuff like that, something to be tracking what's going on. Yeah, it's a little bit more intensive, but at least you're tracking your numbers. You're doing something to be on top of the information so that you can be making informed decisions until you get to a point where you do have the funding to be using some of these more powerful tools. Make sure you're doing something. You'd be surprised at how many things are available out there on YouTube to help you understand what you should be doing. For QuickBooks Online alone, there are literally thousands of training videos that QuickBooks has put out on one simple playlist that gives you anything that basically you'd want to know how to do it. There's some programs out there, accounting programs out there, ZipBooks, Manager.io, Adobe. I don't have a lot of experience using them, but they exist. They have some decent reviews. They're free. So again, whether you don't have any capital and you really are trying to scrape on by, or you've gotten to the point where you are established, make sure you're using some of the tools and resources that are out there, because it really will make a difference in terms of what you can do and how you can build your business. All right, so let's talk about, I said earlier, I'm going to tell you a little bit about AC Construction and how all of these things that we just talked about has made a difference in our business. So when AC Construction started, it was AC Drywall. And then AC Drywall became AC Drywall and Painting. And now we're AC Construction. So how did that transition happen? It happened because of the job costing, honestly, is how it came down to it. My business partner, Anthony, and I, his partner, Chris, so we came from Eastern Contracting Services, which was a big company, insulation, gutters, garage doors. And it was a great education for us in terms of understanding how to run a business, the things that really go into it, understanding our overhead, understanding how to apply it to our pricing, how to do the calculation of your overhead as a percentage of your cost of goods sold is a really easy, simple trick, for lack of a better word, to use to make sure that you're getting to the right pricing. We'll come back to that. So because we had all that foundation, when we started AC Drywall, we started our business and we were tracking our jobs. Every single job, we made sure that when we finished the job, we knew whether we made money, lost money, what went right, what went wrong. Oh, we mismeasured this, whatever the case may be. We started to get an understanding of the types of clients that we work for that are very profitable for us, the types of clients that we work for that are not profitable for us. We don't make a lot of profit because they beat us up on price. They take 45 to 60 days to pay their bills. It's really just a strain on our business. It's a strain on our cash flow. And we identified the customers that are the exact opposite thing. They make good profit. They pay us well. They don't cause a lot of headaches. Hey, let's do some more work with them. And then as we continued to grow, we got into doing some painting and we got into doing some construction work. And when I say construction, we don't do additions, we don't do new construction or anything like that. Our niche that we found has to do with working in retirement communities, independent living, assisted living. We got an opportunity to do some painting at a facility. And the next thing you know, because we do good work and because we're organized, we send in clear invoices that are easy to understand. We have all our paperwork lined up in terms of our certificates of insurance and W-9 and all the things that, some of these bigger companies look for when they're dealing with contractors because they don't want the headache. They gave us the opportunity to bid on some more work that had to do with apartment renovations, putting in new carpet, doing some paint, doing some tile, like nothing crazy. And so we got the opportunity to do that. And the next thing you know, we're doing more of it. And because we're tracking our business, and now we're not just looking at individual jobs, we're taking our business and we're breaking it up into divisions. We have a drywall division, we have a paint division, and we have a construction division. And at the end of each month, we can see all the work that we did in each one of those divisions. And how profitable those divisions are. And pretty soon it became very clear that our drywall division, where we started, is our least profitable division, and it gives us the biggest headaches. It's a quantity over quality type business for anybody that does anything with drywall. You have to generate a lot of work. You have to do a lot of business to generate a small amount of profit. It's just kind of the nature of the business in terms of the competition that's out there and things like that. But our work in the apartments, the apartment renovation, very profitable. It helps our overhead because we're sending a lot of employees to one central location each day. We can order material in bulk and have it delivered because it's repeatable work that we're doing. There's like 5 different models. Each model has 3 specs, and it's the same kind of process over and over again. So because we're understanding what's happening in our business, we understood this is where we want to take our business. This is where we want to focus more of our marketing, more of our networking, the types of people that we want to reach out to and make relationships with is not in the drywall business, it's in this business. And so as we started to do that, our business literally skyrocketed. It's year over year, we've had substantial revenue growth and, more importantly, substantial profit growth because we built a stable foundation for our business. We understood where the profit was, we understood what the numbers were telling us, and we were able to go after it and make that our priority. So we had those controls in place where every single week we do the same things. On every single week on Tuesday, payroll gets entered. Every single week on Wednesday, jobs in progress get reviewed and invoices get sent out. We understand what our overhead is because we're reviewing it on a regular basis. So when I said earlier about overhead and how it relates to your cost of goods sold, again, this isn't rocket science. This is pretty easy. It was taught to us, and I know a lot of other companies that do it this way. We work it as a percentage of our cost of goods sold. So we say that for every, based on the historical data of the company, and you kind of review it on a rolling basis because it will change slightly, but for every $1,000 that we spend on a job, we spend $350 in overhead. So how do we get to that number? It's really not that hard. You take your P&L, you make sure that everything's kind of allocated the way it should be. You have everything in your cost of goods sold that should be there. You have everything in your expenses, your overhead where it should be. And then you take those bottom line numbers and you say, you take my expenses divided by your cost of goods sold, and you get a percentage, you get a number. And depending on how you run your business and how you operate, that number could be as low as 10%. That number, I've seen it up in the high 40s, which usually isn't so great, but sometimes for some businesses, it's fine. So it's going to be somewhere in that range typically. So now when I'm pricing a job, let's just say 35%, I know that for every $1,000 I spend on a job, I'm going to generate another $350 in overhead. So the next time I get the opportunity to put a bid in on a job, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to determine this is how much paint I need. This is how much trim I need. I'm going to need this much in tile, this much in carpet. All right, here's all my material costs. I'm going to have to hire this sub. I'm going to need this equipment rental, and it's going to cost me this much in labor because I need 5 guys for 5 days, whatever the case may be. And here's my number. Here's what I think it's actually going to cost me out of pocket to do this job. It's going to cost me $10,000, right? So now I know that my overhead on a job of that size is going to be $3,500 based off of everything that I've done in my business over the last however many years you can go back and breaking it up and reviewing it, $3,500. So my real true cost for this job is not $10,000. My real true cost for this job is $13,500. And now on top of that is where I'm going to build my profit. Now, whether it's a dollar amount, depending on the type of job that you're going after, the contract, you know what your bid limits are, or you're shooting for a certain percentage, you're shooting for 15%, 20%, whatever, you know what your actual break-even number is. So you can build on top of that and generate actual net profit. And like I said, it's really not that hard of a calculation. You have to sit down and figure out your cost of goods sold anyway. You can't just bid a job without having any kind of idea of how much it's going to cost you to complete that job. So once you've done that work, it's literally a few more simple calculations, including like your burden for workers' comp, all that stuff. You can roll all that into it, and it really becomes a very simple calculation to get to your true cost so you can generate some true net profit. And then the last thing that we do is, I put it there as simply as Thursday morning, which means nothing to anybody that's reading it, but Thursday mornings are the reason why we are as successful as we are. Every single Thursday morning, like clockwork, my business owner and I, Anthony, my business partner and I, Anthony, we sit down and we review the business. We work on the business. We don't work in the business. We review what's going on. Sometimes it takes as little as a half hour. Sometimes it takes an hour and a half, depending on what's going on. But we go over everything. from the jobs that are in progress to make sure that there hasn't been any jobs that were completed that need to have an invoice sent out on them. We review accounts receivables to make sure that nobody's getting by, nobody's skating a little bit too long without having some kind of communication from us. Send the invoice out again, follow up, make sure they don't have a question. We review our accounts payables because being on top of your accounts payables is just as important as being on top of your accounts receivables. You want to develop good relationships with your vendors, with your house accounts, with your subs. You want to be that reliable person that other people want to work with because inevitably there's going to come a time where you need a favor. You have a tight window, you have a tight turnaround that you need something, and those relationships that you build by being the type of vendor or type of contractor that's paying their bills on time, not short paying, not having to be bothered. Those are the types of things where it comes back and all of a sudden people are willing to help you. People are willing to go out and do extra for you because they know the type of company that you run and how you operate, and they know that's going to come back to them. So you put good out in the world and you get good back. So every Thursday morning, we go over our receivables, we go over our payables, we go over the jobs in progress, make sure nothing slips through the cracks. If we do work for you, you are getting an invoice and you are going to have to pay us. We are not going to miss it. So every single week, our invoicing goes out. If a job got done, the invoice is going out and we review it to make sure it doesn't happen. Then we review our schedule to make sure we have our schedule set for at the very least, the next week for exactly where everybody's going, what units they're working in, et cetera. So our team knows what's happening. Our project managers know what's happening so that they can be making better decisions for getting material delivered, schedules, things along those lines. So everything intermediate done right now. And then the last thing we do is go over any big picture things that might have come up because inevitably things come up during the week. I'm running blue collar back office. Anthony's running the construction company every day. There's not time every day for us to go over every little thing that might pop up, but Thursday mornings we do. So nothing kind of slips through the cracks. Every Thursday morning, we review what's happening in the business. And if it's not Thursday morning, it's because somebody's going on vacation or something like that, but it's known. So guess what? We schedule it for another time in the week. But no matter what, this happens. We focus on our business, on what's happening. So we know every Thursday the status of our business. We know how our bank accounts are, how our cash flow is, what the next couple of weeks are going to look like. And just taking that short period of time has made a huge impact in terms of my life, for lack of a better word. Really, the things that we're able to do, the way we're able to grow over the last several years, the way I'm able to live my life just because of that. And what happens is too many times, a lot of business owners make that a when I have time. I will sit down and review my P&L. I'll sit down and review my balance sheet and my receivables. Hopefully, I'll get to it on Friday if I have time. You'll never have the time or hardly ever have the time. You have to make the time. It has to be that important to you that it is a set block time on your schedule, just like anything else would be. If you had a doctor's appointment you had to go to, and then somebody called you up and said, "Hey, can you come out and take a look at a job?" You say, "No, I have to go to my cardiologist. I can't make it." If you'd say, "Hey, but I can make it Thursday afternoon. I can make it Friday morning." It's that same kind of idea. You have this time blocked on your calendar, just as if it was another client you were visiting or a doctor's appointment or something along those lines, so that in as short as 30 minutes of a window each week, you know the health of your business so you can be making better decisions. So again, this is the owner's mindset. This is part of the transition that we're going to talk about. You're going to go from, focusing on what you need to do right now to generate some revenue to understanding the business and what you need to do to grow it and put people in a better position, develop as a leader as opposed to a worker or even just a business owner, right? So you want to be working on the business. You don't want to be working just in it. You don't want to be in construction. You don't want to be on a job every day, swinging a hammer, installing trim, installing tile, stuff like that. That's not, going to lead to the type of long-term stability and success that you're probably looking for. Now, different stages of the business, they're going to require different things from you. In the beginning, yes, you're probably going to have to be on the job with the knee pads on, putting in the tile and everything else like that. But depending on what your goals are, depending on the type of business that you're looking to grow and develop, which I would assume if you're in a business like in a meeting like this, you're probably not looking to just get to a standpoint, a situation where you have a business where you have steady work and that's all you're trying to build. If that's all you're trying to build, then God bless you. And I hope it goes well and I hope it's profitable and you just don't have a boss to have to answer to every day. But if you're looking to build a business that can generate money for you, that's not entirely dependent on you, then you need to kind of remove yourself from every single interaction that needs to happen. You can't be the bottleneck of the business. There has to be other systems, tools, and people in place that have the responsibility and the accountability to help run the business with you. So that's investing in your systems, your people, and your tools, right? That's that transition into building out and not just being solo and on your own. And profit is the byproduct of good leadership decisions, right? It doesn't just magically happen. You don't magically have profit. You have to make the decisions to get there. And these are some of the things that we're talking about. So this is a transition that a lot of people make as they start, right? You're a worker, you have a skill, you have a trade. There's something that you do that you're really good at and you really enjoy doing. So you decide, I'm going to open my own business. So now I'm doing it. I'm the owner of the business. I got Dan's Construction Company. I'll come put up a deck for you. I spend my weekend putting up decks and everything else like that. But at some point, if you have the goals that I think we're talking about today, you have to make that transition into becoming a leader, having people that are there for you, whether it's physically working for you, whether it's outsourced, whether it's virtual, whatever the case may be, people that are helping you run your business more efficiently, because you're going to get to the point where you being the worker isn't actually profitable for your business anymore. You need to have workers that are out there putting up the decks, and you have to be in the position where you're landing more work, you're developing better relationships with your vendors so that you're getting better pricing, you're doing things along those lines, buying equipment, growing, whatever the case may be. You don't have the time. It's not your best use of time to be actually doing all of that work anymore. So there's a time and a place for everything. I think there's a song about that from Simon and Garfunkel. But there's a time that's good to grow and there's a time to pause. You can't always be in a growth mode. You'll burn through your cash flow. You'll put yourself in a position where even with taking out loans, extending lines of credit, extending credit cards, everything else like that, you'll extend your balance sheet and your debt to equity in such a way that you'll put yourself in such a corner that you'll then be stuck there whether you want to be or not until you can kind of build yourself back out. So what I mean by knowing when to grow and when to pause all ties into, at each stage, making sure that you're operating as efficiently as possible before you take that next step, right? So if I'm $1 million business and I'm kind of trying to do everything myself every day, the world's on fire and I'm just putting everything out and I'm scrambling and everything else like that, that's not the time to decide, hey, I want to get another crew on the road and I want to become a $2 million business. No, that's the time to kind of, keep your pipeline where it is and start putting the procedures in place to actually make your business run more efficiently. In the short term, in the very short term, it's going to feel like you're hurting yourself because now you're going to hire somebody, whether you hire somebody in-house or whether you outsource it. You're going to hire somebody, you're going to bring on somebody to help your team. That's going to cost you money that you're not spending right now. So it's going to feel like you're making a backward step, but you're not. You're bringing in somebody that's going to take on some of these processes, use some of these tools, help your business run more efficiently, right? So in the short term, there's going to be cost, but you're going to start to see, because you've brought that person on, because you've expanded your team, now things are, nothing's slipping through the cracks. I'm getting paid quicker. My cash flow is more consistent. I'm able to work and bid more jobs. So my pipeline's still the same, but now I'm doing it a little bit more efficiently. I'm spending more time on my pricing. I know what's going on with my profit. And now I have a foundation in place. Now I have a situation where, because I have somebody here supporting me and because I have these processes, now I can make the transition and I can grow. And that's the time to do it, right? So now everything's kind of in place. I've maximized what I can do. Let's grow to that $2 million range. And then when you get there, it's kind of that same plateau is going to happen. Every business doesn't just scale in a perfect linear line. You're going to have these peaks and then plateaus, and then hopefully some more peaks and plateaus, because when you get to this new stage, it's time to recalibrate and get your foundation set, right? Just as you're building out the house, you don't just keep going straight up. The foundation has to get a little bit wider as you build and get higher. So at each stage of your business, you want to make sure that you're now bringing on the right people, the right tools to make sure that you can handle this next stage of growth. And you also ideally want to do that without completely extending all the credit in the world, right? Always maximizing every kind of line of credit, always maximizing your credit cards, everything like that. Ideally, you get to the point where you can actually invest in yourself. You can take some of the equity that you've built up in the business, some of your assets, some of the things that you're doing, and use that to grow your business. Because then is when you're just generating some real growth, some real profit. When you're taking profit from the company and you're using that to buy equipment, using that to buy new land because you're going to put up a new house to flip, and you're not relying on the banks and the credit cards to get you there. now you're really starting to make some big jumps on your balance sheet on the health and financials of the company that are really hard to put a number on, because you're just building assets. You're building assets and you're building equity without having it tied to a liability. That's when some of the magic really starts to happen. But it doesn't happen overnight, and you have to have the people and the procedures in place to get there. So I think as we went through all this, I'm pretty sure we covered all of it, but let's track some of it, right? So obviously understanding why profit matters and why revenue alone isn't enough, right? Just top line growth with no profit is a lot of headaches, a lot of liability, and no extra money in your pocket. And I don't think anybody wants that. We talked about some of the common profit killers in a small business, the key numbers everybody should track. My check marks are not going in order for some reason. How systems, people, and tools drive efficiency, profit, and how to build a business that runs without constant owner involvement. That's kind of the last key part that is really, really important, is you want to get to the point where everything doesn't rely on you. Eventually you get to the point where you have project managers, you have a sales manager, you can go to the Keys for the weekend or go to the Keys for 2 weeks with your wife or your partner or whatever, and things are going to keep humming along. Like you kind of get to enjoy the fruits of your labor eventually. Again, it doesn't happen overnight, but that's eventually what we're trying to build towards. Any questions? Nobody? Nothing? All right. Well, I appreciate your all time.
Hey, Dan, I got a question for you.
Sure. Go ahead, Warren.
So Jack stepped away, but it's a question that I think Jack would be interested in asking. And that is, when should somebody who's early on in their process of starting their business get involved with a company like yours?
So I'm a little biased, but
A little? No.
yeah, a little biased. I think what one of my clients calls it, and I love the term, he calls it his virtual board of directors, right? I think when you're starting a business, there are certain relationships that you really want to build out immediately. So you want to have a relationship with a CPA. That's not me, right? But you want to have a CPA. You don't want to be relying on, just going to the mall and getting your 1040 filed and stuff. You want to be working with a CPA who understands businesses and can give you actual good guidance, tax planning, things along those lines, because things are changing constantly. Every year, something changes in terms of what can be done. Have a good relationship with your insurance broker, somebody that can make sure that you're getting the coverages that you need, you're not getting coverages that you don't, is going to work with you to get you the things that you need to land the types of contracts that you want to land without putting it all on your shoulders. Develop a good relationship with somebody in the banking. Like, don't just, you can go work with a Bank of America or Chase, some of those big banks. They're big, but that doesn't mean they're bad. But go develop a relationship with somebody there, somebody that you can call and have a conversation with. And these are things where people are working for you, and they're going to their business and their profitability is tied to how successful you are, right? So immediately you can develop those kind of relationships. And then depending on who you are as a person, right? Like there's some people that we've spoken to that honestly, they love the business side of it, right? They love the numbers. So they've called us, I've had conversations with them. They're doing their QuickBooks themselves. It's a part of the business they actually enjoy. They have it carved out. Then, hey man, if you have a question that I can answer for you, I'm happy to answer for you. And if you want to reach out and have a conversation, I'm happy to have a conversation, but you got this under control. But if that's not you, if you find that you just don't have the time to get to your bookkeeping, or it's a part of the business that just makes your brain hurt, then reach out to somebody like us, because I'm the type of person that can help you, right? And there's other bookkeeping companies out there that can do that as well. So there's a lot of different options, but right from the beginning, I recommend having those kind of relationships, because they can only help you as you grow, as opposed to you trying to have every answer to every question yourself. It's not realistic.
Completely agree with you. One of the things that I like to share with younger people and people who are going into business, whether they're young or not, is that every company has a finance department, every company has a legal department, every company has a marketing department, a sales department, and operations. Whether they know it or not, they have it. And you
Right.
said, very valuable things about how it could be outsourced, you know? We
Yeah.
have a bookkeeper who comes to our office twice a month. We have people from Metro that we work with regularly, like Mr. Nussbaum, who our legal department, even though my partner's an attorney, I still go to a third party person who's an expert in maybe contracts or stuff that we don't necessarily need to get into that because they're the expert, you know? And so on and
Exactly.
so, yeah, so
Yeah.
on and so
Do
forth.
the
with
things that you're good at and that you're
marketing,
best at.
yes.
Yes.
Marketing and sales, all
So-
those things can be outsourced, and what you talk about as a fractional CFO.
Right. So
Right.
I tell people all the time, like, yeah, I can hang cabinets in your house for you. You will be very upset with the result. Like, that's not what I'm great at. I know how to do it. I physically can do it, but that's not the best thing for, like, that's not the best use of my skills, and you're not going to be happy with it. So
Yeah.
you're probably not a bookkeeper. So don't try to be a bookkeeper. You might be able to do it, and maybe you can do it well, but how long is it taking you, right? So is it taking you 8 hours a week to do your bookkeeping, where instead you can be spending an hour and a half in communications with us, and those other 6.5 hours you're developing and growing your business? That's some of the little sales pitch that we give, but it's about understanding where your skills lie and what the absolute best use of your time is, and trying to maximize and focus on that. Even in our business, if I'm doing, me personally, in blue collar back office, if I'm doing a lot of bookkeeping, that means I'm not doing my job properly, right? My best skill, my best use of my time for blue collar back office is doing things like this to help grow the association and help other people. It's, working with our team and making sure that they have the tools that they need, the training that they need, leading those kind of things. It's, working with our clients that I do some of the advisory work and stuff, and all that kind of good stuff. If I'm actually doing bookkeeping and data entry and stuff like that, then something's gone wrong. Somebody's out sick. I'm not doing my job properly. Something's gone wrong. And it's the same thing for anybody in any business.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I have to say something, because Dan and his team are the bookkeepers of Metro, and they are unbelievable. They have saved us so much time and actually really cleaned up our books. So we can look at any moment of the day and see where we stand financially, and it's really, really helpful. So they are A plus in my book.
I
So
appreciate
thanks,
that,
Dan.
Michelle. And you're really easy to work with. So I appreciate that as well.
So that's it. Anyone else have any other questions? No?
No more questions from me.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody.
All right,
I
well,
really
thanks,
do.
Dan.
Yeah. I
Hey,
appreciate
Dan.
everybody taking the time.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. I feel
Yeah.
like it's really valuable, and hopefully everybody on the call, gained something and maybe just reminded of things they should be doing, or newly learned things that they should be doing. But
Yeah.
it's absolutely excellent to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if anybody ever, honestly, to anybody in the association, you just have a question, you just want to pick my brain, you want to bounce something off me, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you in any way that I can, or point you in a direction to get you the help that you need. So it's
Awesome.
kind of the
Well,
motto.
thank you.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you, Dan.
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.